really don't want myself or other members of the town to get lulled into the fact that there is a pile of gold at the end of the rainbow, when in fact, as Bill's pointed out, it's very clear a legal zoning board matter that I have no clue, especially since, we get from Dan, thank you, Dan, honestly,
Yes,
some
thank you.
information on what the revised language will be for 9, but I still don't know what that means personally, and I would love to have legal counsel advise me that what is right and what is wrong. I'm not of that opinion right now where I can say, but I would like to get more information.
Well, in that regard, what was happening with the pounding out of this revised language over the last day, that, in my view, should have happened at the planning board level.
Oh, sure.
Months ago. So we're playing catch-up ball here, trying to negotiate, get this stuff right.
Well,
Somebody has to get it right, so I
let
mean.
me,
if the
let's just
planning-
say I will say, it's not the finance committee's job to get it right.
No, it's not our job.
And to the point that I'm really counting on the powers to be, the brain powers to be, whether it be John or is it Susan, or whoever is heading, and really did a fine job on the legal presentation, is saying, this is not perfected, and, hey, I'm entitled, I'm excited about the potential.
Well, true.
And I don't want to say I'm going to lose the wave, because if the language is bad, I will lose the wave if the language is bad.
If it's bad. So people have been working over the last day, 2 days, to vet this language, and as far as I can see, town council is happy with it.
Well, I just want to stop right now and say, I think we'll wait for tomorrow night to see what the town council has to say about it, because
Is town council going to come to our meeting? I
she's
know
not coming
go-
to our meeting.
No, she's going to go to the Board of Selectmen meeting.
No,
So-
she's gonna she'll be at, I don't know if the Board of Selectmen don't have a meeting tonight.
No, tomorrow night,
Tomorrow
they
night.
do, at
Yeah.
5:30.
5:30.
Yeah.
They're going to have it, and she's going to be there.
So
So,
the first,
are we
will we hear
going-
her at the annual town meeting as a citizen?
I'm sure she will speak on behalf of, I would imagine she would render an opinion. We frequently heard from town council at town meeting about various matters, mostly dealing with zoning.
well,
I mean,
okay,
my point partially is, to what extent is this a self-inflicted crisis? Are we in a crisis mode? Is the town in a crisis mode? Were we screaming out for medical marijuana tenants? No. The petitioner has a timing that they would like to meet, and I understand that. But I also think, purely from keeping up with, we're trying to catch like a falling knife on this one.
Yeah,
And we
we
don't
are.
have to be. And we could have a special town meeting that could be centered around articles of this nature, and we've done things like that in the past. And to me, I said that to the moderator. The moderator told me that petitioner wanted to move forward, that this was the timing they wanted, and they wanted to do it at the annual town meeting. To me, it just seems like such a big and complicated change. It needs a little bit more time to fully mature.
well, you could slow it down by recommending that the petitioner withdraw his petition and
Right.
not vote, and have a special town meeting after we've all had a chance to have all of this hashed out by our boards and get out of each other's hair. Because I'll tell you, the timing on this has gotten into all of our hairs on all of our boards.
Right.
And I don't appreciate being herded like that.
But, no, sometimes things are time is of the essence, and, maybe I'll see this a little bit too biased from a company perspective, where I'm running constantly against deadlines and I have to make decisions, where I don't have all the information. Granted, it's a small company. If I get it wrong, the world is not going under. But maybe if we get it wrong here, I don't think North Ender will go under either way. But what I want to say, they started out with a proposal 2 months ago. And then they went into through the normal process of the planning board was weighing in, the zoning board was weighing in, legal was weighing in. I mean, they followed protocol. Yeah, and at the end of the day, planning board had suggestions and zoning and everybody, and then they came up with that revised warrant where all the, concerns are addressed now. Apparently, the planning board is fine with how it's
Well,
written.
I mean, I just think we got to be very careful
The,
because
this,
I don't even know that the planning board has seen this.
Why
So
don't-
let's just say what we know. We know that this came out, and we know that they were trying to meet the objections of the planning board, and that the town council is happier with this than with the prior one.
What
I
are
think
you
that's-
afraid of?
so, and now,
Well, what I'm afraid of is
Overstepping our
being,
bounds.
yeah, I don't want to say
Overstepping
anything
our
that's,
bounds?
that we
I
don't
think
know.
our- I think
don't-
we tell them what our bounds are.
Yeah, but I don't
frankly.
think we can make blanket statements like the planning board is okay with this. We don't know that. I agree with you, Bill. We don't know that.
I don't know the town council's okay with it.
Yeah.
They're happy with it, but what's that mean? I mean, Bill got this today at 1:20.
No, I spoke with town council today at 4 o'clock, and she's happy with it, so.
Okay, well, I want to hear town council myself.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. And I would like to have town council here tonight, but we don't have town council here
we'll
tonight.
probably hear that tomorrow, or maybe John is coming, is he? he's
John
coming?
is coming tonight.
So we'll
town-
ask him.
Town,
So can
you know, and the position of the town manager for whom the town council works, the board of selectmen and the town manager, was that he did not want her, you know, kind of pushing a quote-unquote town point of view on this because she's a town employee and it's not her decision about, and he just felt like that wasn't a position for her to be in.
No, it's just
which
a
is-
legal opinion of how it's
I
written.
know, but it's also, we also don't, we're not his boss. He doesn't
Right.
report to us.
Right, right.
So if he doesn't want his employee to come,
No,
that's,
he's every
you know,
right.
that's kind of, that's his prerogative. You know, yes, it
Oh,
would have
I
been nice,
differ with that,
tomorrow
but
night,
never
we can ask her, you know, as private citizens, or, you know, we could ask her opinions of the legal issues involved in the zoning. I think she'll make a statement, and I'm sure that she'll take questions.
So,
well,
but
I
let's
don't
just
agree with any of
assume,
that.
maybe I'm biased here, but, you know, it went through all those meetings and an upgraded language, and everybody's, it doesn't mean you are for or against it.
Right.
You're just confirming, yes, the language I asked for is in. So let's assume they're all happy. And then you still have to make a decision.
Right.
And at the end, for me, this is just a technical decision about the zoning. If we all vote yes, there is still a lengthy permitting and licensing process after that. So if there are any concerns we did not address in that zoning, you still have years to, you know, understand what is really going on before anything is happening.
Right, but the question here is the finance committee, should the finance committee submit a recommendation on Article 9, on zoning? And some believe that, no, it's zoning. That's for them to give a recommendation, but not for us. We all agreed in last meeting, Article 10, absolutely. There's financial numbers in it, therefore, we should give our recommendation. Am I using the right word? Recommendation on Article 10. I think the question at stake is, do we believe as a finance committee that we should be giving a recommendation on Article 9 and 11?
I think that answer is, we certainly are able to do that. They have financial impact on the town, and I think that we should recognize that it does. And we could recommend
guess it all
no
goes-
action, we could recommend, as long as we recommend something, as long as we recognize that looking at Article 9 is part of our job.
But every zoning issue has a potential financial impact.
Yeah, but this one is special.
No,
No, I
well,
don't know.
no, but how, yeah, but that's a slippery slope.
It is.
I mean, then it becomes do we then for now and forevermore, look at every zoning article that has a big development involved in it?
Nope.
Well, yeah, but what, you say that, but really, I mean, do we?
Like a,
A major, what if it's a major, a major development, a major housing development? Do we look at that because it affects the schools? Do we look at it, you know?
In my opinion, yes and no. If we don't ask for information about a zoning law, we should not weigh into anything. But in this case, we are actually asking for more information. about that Article 9, Article 9 and 11. And we are more educated now since we have all these documents. So I think it might not be a financial a decision, but just the fact that we are asking for information around these articles and investigate and review, I think we have a right to vote now.
I disagree.
We have, I would see us, we had the benefit on getting all these documents, and we had the resources to ask other people. We talked to John, and we utilized that, and then I think we have almost the duty to weigh on it now.
Well, there's a question, right and duty. I mean, I just don't really think we have the right to weigh in on this stuff. We have a charter, we have a policy that dictates what we look at. So I don't know that just asking for external information gives
Let's
us
think
the
about
right
this
to
in a-
then act on it
in a
in
different
any way.
I think so too.
So think about, say that the planning board decided to weigh in on something that was actually typically what they wouldn't vote on in the town warrant, because there may be planning implications. Well, that's a really slippery slope too, and I think there's specific committees to address specific issues, because that's their core competency. And even though we may have gotten additional information to help us get our heads around Article 10, which is appropriate, I don't think it's appropriate to enter down that slippery slope, just like it's inappropriate for a different committee that's charter isn't financially focused to vote on a finance committee issue.
If they spend hours and hours weighing through balance sheets and P&Ls, even if they are not focused on financing, I think by just studying, they have the right then to vote on it.
I think the
You have
difference
to be
is,
educated to vote on something. That is the key requirement. If you're, of course, not studying, then you have no right to vote on it.
But
we actually started to study around it, and we are asking for more information.
and that's a
today.
good transition to our guests.
And I think then the situation changes,
Okay. Good evening, John and Peter. Very nice to see you. Please come up. So why don't we do sort of full introductions, and I don't know if, I know Peter doesn't know all of us, so we'll just do a quick introduction. We've seen John already this year, if not in prior years, but why don't you start, Sasha?
Sure. Sasha Weinrich. This is my first year on the Finance Committee. Nice to meet you.
Karen Blake, 6 year.
Jen Goldman, second year.
Bill Callahan, 5th year.
Tim Shearhart, I don't know, 5th year?
Thomas Ringler, 3rd year.
Liz Guerin, 3rd year as well.
Okay.
Peter Boynton, a couple of years on the planning board.
John Simons, I've been on the planning board now for 31 years.
You taught us all.
So we know, we were just talking about how we have sort of a moving target and a situation that will have some sort of a timing end to it, right? Like tomorrow night, some sort of a decision will be made. And so originally we were looking at Article 10, but we thought we needed more information about 9 and 11 and kind of how the planning board saw it, so that we could really understand Article 10. And then, there's some thought of what are the financial implications that go along with the whole project writ large. And so we're wrestling with what our rights, duties, and obligations are with respect to 9/11. So we would just like to hear from you, kind of maybe a little history of what the zoning board did when they established the first MMOD, medical marijuana. What are the words again? What's MMOD stand for, if anyone's watching at home?
Overlay district.
Okay, medical marijuana overlay district. And then in particular about Articles 9 and 11, the changes, how your committee saw them, and as things have evolved, kind of where you're at now.
Yeah, okay, good. I think, first of all, the history going back in time is Anytime there's a new major use of an activity that's allowed in the state, like medical marijuana, if you think about it, like cell towers, like wind farms, the town has put together a bylaw related to those things. And in some cases, in the case of medical marijuana, you're right. Last year, we put a bylaw in place that addressed and allowed for the use of medical marijuana. And we basically used a model bylaw recommended by the state and used by a lot of other towns. And there's probably two main characteristics of that bylaw, to oversimplify, is one, it allows the use of medical marijuana, but what it does is it limits the size and the scope. And in the case of North Andover, the maximum size that was allowed was 20,000 square feet. And that's very important as we go forward. The other thing that it does is, under the existing bylaw, is that it assigns the area where that use is allowed. And in this case, it was basically put on Holt Road where that use is allowed. And, similar to, we know the experience in the old adult entertainment district, which is also an overlay district, basically in that same general area. If you think a use is less than a optimal use, you try to put the use in a specific area. Under state law, you really can't just say, we don't want it at all, you have to put it someplace. So this was the bylaw that we had. So, Pete, I don't know, you want to add anything to that? Yeah.
Yeah, so why, if I may
Go ahead,
interrupt,
yeah.
So why Holt Street and why 20,000? Was that a?
Well, I think first, Holt Street is because it was an industrial area of heavy industrial use. It's not close to where anybody lives. It wouldn't have any much of an externality impact, even if the worst came to worst, there was a dispensary involved. So that's why it was there as opposed to someplace else. It would have probably as limited impact on the community as you could have. 20,000 square feet was really, I think, the state best practice from planning of what they thought, because you basically need at least 5,000. If you get up above 20,000, you're talking about something that's pretty major, pretty substantial. But you can, the experience has been you can grow something for medical purposes on 20,000 square feet, and the feeling was that the impact of that in terms of externalities, in terms of smell, water, truck traffic, all those other things would be pretty limited. So 20,000 feet was a reasonable number. Could have been 25, yeah, maybe, could have been 15, but 20 is probably a reasonable number for that.
And maybe maybe I didn't understand it, and not having that kind of zone, that alternative was not possible.
You can't say, I don't want it, period, and zone it out. Under state law, what you do is you take the opposite thing, is you allow for the use, but you restrict it to the area and to the size.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the bylaw that we had last year. Now, in the meantime, what has happened is obviously under the state ballot this past year, the state voted in favor of recreational marijuana. That has happened. It's a coincidental event. What has happened is that very late in this year's town meeting process for submitting zoning articles, the applicant submitted an article to change the existing law for medical marijuana. And they did it two ways. They did two things. One is that they eliminated the size restriction completely, took it completely out, although apparently in the version that they came back with today, they made it 1 million square feet. But basically, they changed from 20,000 square feet to 1 million square feet. So that's 50 times bigger. And I'll come back to that. The other thing that they did was that they added another area that would allow for that use the 1600 Osgood property was put in the overlay district and made it, you could actually put a cultivation facility at 1600 Osgood in addition to Holt Road. So that's the two articles. One changes the location, the other one changes the allowed size.
John, you've seen the changes that were made then. Are you happy with them?
We voted 4-0 against it for the reason that,
The revisions?
well, we haven't even seen official, the revisions have never been given to us formally as a board.
Oh, okay.
The-
But you've seen them personally?
We've seen them, and we haven't re-voted on them, but we're not in favor of them because they don't substantively change what's been proposed. We had always thought it would be about 1 million square feet because that's the size of the property. So restricting it to 1 million square feet doesn't really do anything in terms of our view. So I'm pretty safe to think that I don't think our board will re-vote again tomorrow night before the meeting, but here's two of the members, and I think the other members would vote the same way they voted before.
Well, how about the provision that the way it was originally drafted, the citizens petition, multiple uses could happen in the Holt Road, well,
Right.
all over the entire district
Right.
once it was expanded. So you could have simultaneous adult.
No, you're correct. I mean,
adult
it
entertainment,
is
but now
better
adult-
than
now
what
adult-
it was,
Now
but
adult
you-
entertainment has been ruled out.
No, that
Does
is-
that make a
it-
change for you?
It is better, but we still disagree and would oppose the article. I mean, there are often situations where we'll see zoning articles that we don't like and we vote against, but we still say, if you're going to make it better, change this, this, and this,
Yeah.
because if it does pass, we want it to be better than it would have been otherwise. We don't want to shoot our, cut off our nose to spite our face. I mean, is really what it comes down to. But the big point for the planning board is that in issues that have a profound impact on the future of the town, material things that could change the quality of life 5, 10, 20 years down the road, we have always spent 6 months to a year studying them before we've actually voted them in town meeting. And let me give you like 3 examples. The Edgewood retirement community, it took us 2 years to finish the zoning for Edgewood and to get it right. And I think that if you look at the consequences of that in terms of a beautiful property put into the woods in a very nice way, very high tax revenue with very little impact on town services, that worked very well. And the time we spent was well worth it. If we had rushed ahead on that thing, I guarantee there's a lot of money the town would not have gotten that it ended up getting, and there's also a possibility that that might have run under a nonprofit status and we would never have gotten any tax revenue. So the process worked. A second one is all the watershed rezoning back, that all the way goes back into the 80s as a result of the Giardia epidemic and as a result of the need to build the water treatment plant. We spent a year that we got Merrimack Valley Planning Authority and other consultants to work with us on that. We didn't do that right away. It took a year.
We all feel rushed with this project.
Yeah.
Every one of us.
And that is the point when this thing is for something this large, this material, this significant. They waited to the very end of the town meeting planning process and put it in. And I don't want to be in a position of swapping drafts back and forth at the last second and not knowing. I mean, we wanted to go off and Peter and I and others have scrambled to find out, well, what's the situation in Colorado like? What's the situation in Oregon like? What's the situation in Maine like? And what's the impact of smells and odors? What's the impact of potential water? Yes, and now that's one that Peter's talking about. We think they've totally misrepresented the water situation based on what we know. There are so many things, there's so many other ways potentially of doing it. The problem, 1 million square feet makes this the largest manufacturing facility for marijuana in the world. Think about that. And how much time have we had to look at that and spend and think of the largest in the world? In the end, who knows? But if you look at like Freetown, Mass, that did approve something like that, that took them years. They went through that in years. And their situation, you know, they started, and it's brand new buildings, they haven't been built yet. Here we are, we're taking an existing property, we don't know what the impacts are gonna be.
Are you saying years in terms of going then to town meeting and voting on rezoning? Or years in from the moment the zoning was set to then open doors? What do you mean when you say years?
Well, first of all, in terms of this property, if they're going to do something, it will take them.
I'm not concerned with that. I'm concerned from the
No,
moment
I'm
it's
talking
presented.
about like other towns that have done this. They have spent, before something like this was approved at their town meeting.
Yes.
They spent a year or two looking at it and deciding whether they wanted it or not, and doing all the due diligence and research.
The planning boards and the zoning
The planning
did.
boards and the zoning boards. We're kicking off a long-term planning process, master plan process, where we can incorporate this into
And when
that.
you talk about 1 million square feet, I do realize that is obviously very large, correct. So Irmont and Quincy, those sizes are much smaller footprint in those towns.
Yeah, most of them, I mean, to the best of our knowledge, and this goes in research, I read, like, there was an article in Business Week a few weeks ago about a couple places in Canada that were 700,000 to 800,000 feet, and they said those were the largest ones in the world that had been proposed to that time. But I also know that Freetown, Mass, near New Bedford and Fall River, has approved, basically enabled them to build a separate company, totally different group of people, to build up to 1 million square feet.
The big new facilities in Colorado, at least based on what's publicly available, are expanding indoor facilities to 100,000 square feet. They have a lot more experience as a state than we do. And those are the biggest ones they have there. We're going from, were this to be approved, at 20,000, which is the equivalent of half a football field, to 1 million, which is the equivalent of 21 football fields or 23 acres planted with marijuana inside the property at 1600 August. It's a huge commercial cultivation facility.
Understand, the difference is that all of these places are building from scratch. We are talking about a property that has its own infrastructure of water, sewer, and so forth. Is that a correct statement?
Except that, this is my opinion, and I'm not the ultimate expert on it, but I think from an odor perspective, they're actually, starting from scratch, you're at a huge disadvantage in a 50 to 60-year-old structure than a start-from-scratch structure, because what they do is, a start-from-scratch structure is they're going to build it from the ground up with odor and waste in mind, whereas in this case, they have to take what's already there. I'm not at all convinced or believe that that's going to be an easy problem for them to solve in this case. I think it's going to be one of the largest impediments, because it's not ideal space for the use that they're talking about.
So let's,
Facilities for indoor cultivation require high humidity,
right.
high temperature, very bright lights, enormous electrical consumption, but that does things to the interior of a building to have high humidity conditions around the clock. And if you
Understand
build
that.
a facility
But
for
if the
that-
zoning, let's just say, for sake of argument, hypothetically, Article 9 is approved by the citizens, aren't there steps and requirements that the company, the facility to be, has to meet in terms of air quality, sewer and water and so forth? All those are steps of
Part of
approval.
As part of permitting, presumably.
Thank you, as part of permitting.
Yes, yeah, no, you're exactly right, as part of permitting. But see, one of the things that we're acutely aware of in the planning board is the limits to our authority and where we have discretion and where we don't have discretion.
Yep.
And where we have leverage and where we don't have leverage. Basically, in this case, The town has leverage only in two areas. It has leverage in approving this at town meeting,
Okay.
and the second leverage is the selectmen's, this is unique for this type of project, the selectmen's letter of opposition or non-opposition to this, and which is part of the, which is tied into the host agreement. Once you get past that, we have, they have to come to the planning board, but as we will know, it's only site plan review, and basically, we have no discretion. We basically, unless they come in with just a horrid application, we have to approve it. And every other item is, there's not a discretionary approval. Once this gets approved at town meeting, and once the selectmen end up approving the host agreement, the town's leverage is gone, completely gone.
We must be misinformed, because I was informed that you have the town manager, you have the selectmen, you have each town department and permitting process, you have your planning board, your building departments, and then state licensing. So there was several opportunities to,
There are opportunities, but
what I'm
the problem ends up being is that unless you, my point is, yes, there's a review process. Yes, you go through that, but the ability to say no to something is very limited in every single one of those forums. And I guarantee the developer before town meeting will tell you, hey, we can go through all these other review processes. And then when they're in the meetings with every single one of those groups after the town meeting, they say, you have to approve this. You have no authority to deny us this thing. I mean, I've seen this happen to the planning board any number of times. So there's not an enormous amount of discretion.
So
I guess
can I just,
could I just ask one quick question about
all right.
a normal, so say somebody was, if someone wanted to change a use, and let's just say that it's not to an MMOD, but someone wants to change the use of a parcel from one zone to another related to a development project, how would they, if you were going to say, this is the John Simons, this is the planning board's, I should say, the planning board's preferred way of changing these bylaws, how would you go about it? How would they go about
Let me
it?
give you an example. I mean, we have zoning articles, every year, but in some cases, you may have a substantial development, sometimes you don't. What we typically do is, if it's something that's fairly substantial and it's from scratch, what we ask for is tell us what you're going to do, and tell us, it doesn't have to be the final drawings and things, but we want to know what your building is going to look like, what the use is going to be, as much as you possibly can. And then what we do is we put covenants in place related to that if we're going to change the zoning to a certain district and there's certain uses in that district we don't like, you have to covenant them out. You have to covenant that you're going to build something that looks like this. And that's the way we get better control. We get it in advance. A couple of things. If you look back in time, I don't know if anybody is familiar with the history of the GLSD, the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District, but there's some parallels to that. But the town experienced 15 years of odor problems related to that, multiple suits and multiple litigation related to the GLSD before the problems got solved. They had to spend an enormous amount of money. That's the kind of thing that we worry about a little bit related to something like this. I mean, personally, some of my frustration here is that if we had more time to go through this, we could have come up with an approach that might have worked for everybody, but we didn't have enough time. They said 1 million square foot, that's it. But there's other ways to maybe start at a very low level and come back to town meeting a couple times over a period of years, and based on the experience and how well they do and whether they don't create any problems, and get increased capacity. But
are other town meetings going beyond just rezoning? Are they going to the specifics of the company and the energy that's used and the smell and so forth?
Well, I think what happens is, I think when we talk about it, right, I mean, I think I can give a decent analogy on the planning side. So on the planning side, you say if you're going to build a house,
Yep.
it has to be 20 feet back from the road and 20 feet on each side, and it has to be constructed in such and such a way in accordance with the code. So once you write that down, and that's the zoning, then when someone comes to you with a house that's 20 feet back from the road on all the sides and so forth, they're allowed to do that. So what I think we're talking about here is, this particular group is saying, to use the house analogy, which I think is very simple and easy, is to say, like, we want our house to be 5 feet back from the road on all the different sides. And what the planning board is saying, you know, what the planning board seems to be saying is, if we're going to have this house, and we understand the lot's a little different, right? Maybe we could have this house, or we could do this with 10-foot setbacks or 15-foot setbacks. And then once you pass that law, you're stuck with that, and that's the same for every similarly zoned parcel in town. Is that an accurate statement? So
Yeah, I
once
mean,
you,
I think it's, the concept's the same, except that, you know, the difference is that obviously there's only one of these. You know,
Right.
but the basic notion of what you're talking about is that the point ends up being is, once you zone this and allow for 1 million square feet of this, you can't undo the fact that you've zoned 1 million square feet of that. Whereas if you started a lower number and based on experience, you could ratchet up. That's why, you know, 20,000 square feet, we didn't do any studies. We just looked at what other people did. Probably if it went to 50,000 square feet, we probably wouldn't do anything. But 1 million square feet, we have to say, step back, this could have a profound impact on the infrastructure in our town in many different areas, and that's why we're looking at it. If it weren't 1 million square feet, I don't think we would put this much time and effort into it.
So using your house analogy, you have a basic idea of what to expect, for example, for water usage.
That's what
In a
we
house,
just went through
or-
renovating our house.
Yeah,
So
or,
comparing it.
or even a large development.
Yeah.
We have an idea of how
Yes.
much water use. And one of the concerns we have here is, given the, you know, compare this to the amount of time spent carefully considering and evaluating the Edgewood property that John mentioned. We've had no more time to look at this than we'd spend to permit adding a garage to a house.
The only difference here is that the Edgewood property, they could wait. And we're being told that there's this wave to be caught.
Right. So let's take the example of.
And that, and within that, from my standpoint on this committee, this is an opportunity for the town to buffer, ensure its economic, its fiscal health.
So Karen,
There's an opportunity.
when you're up against competition, and you're coming down to a deadline, and it's called the wave, I'm not, actually, that's a major turnoff for me.
It's
I
a
think
turnoff for me.
It's an opportunity, I agree, but I'm not gonna be pressured by a party, a third party who's got financial interest in this thing, to say, this is the wave, it's the only one coming in, if you don't ride it now, you'll lose it. I was like, John, I'm sorry, but I agree with you. There's too many changes here. There's just too many things going on for me to go with that wave.
Well, there are many examples where if you didn't ride the first wave, you really went under, you know. So I mean, you can go both ways. What I want to really understand, I think it's really unfortunate it comes down to, you know, it's almost like a live or die situation, you know. So we voted down, it's done. We continue, apparently we're also done, you know. So, and what I don't understand, I would like to, I'm not sure if you're underselling the power of a permitting process. What I really understood is you're saying that zoning change goes through, they basically can do whatever they want. Nobody can stop them. I hardly were able to install a above-ground pool without a permit, and I'm definitely wouldn't have not installed a above-ground pool without a permit. You know, everything I heard. And I'm sure the hammer would have come down on me if I had installed an above-ground pool without a permit. So I would like really to understand this a little bit more. Isn't there a way where you can say, you have all these concerns, and I'm sharing these concerns with you, but isn't there a process where you go through a permitting, and if water is an issue, you can stop it right then? If pollution is an issue, or smell is an issue, you can stop it right there. So why is that not
I
possible?
didn't want to sort of go into this because this is perceived as the planning board is adverse to the applicant in this case, but as you, I think you know, the applicant recently installed a very large solar array
Very
on
well
their
aware.
property. And what you don't know is the first time they came through with that, the planning board approved it with conditions, and the applicant sued the planning board and said the conditions were excessive and unreasonable, and they demanded that all the conditions be removed. So the point ends up being is that this was even a case where we approved something and agreed to it and applied conditions, and they went and they fought back against it. Now, they subsequently went back and totally revised the proposal and came up with something in the future that we agreed with, but it's the site plan review process that the planning board has. Basically, if the applicant complies with the applicable law, the planning board cannot say no. We have no discretion. The point is, if you follow the rules, you will get this approved. But if there's an area where there's discretion that it may or may not have impact on people in a way we hadn't anticipated, and it's not in the rules, we don't have the discretion to do that. It's not what it's called. It's a special permit related to use. It is site plan review, and you basically have to approve it. So that developers always say, don't worry, approve it because it's not the end of the process. But then when they actually come in with their approvals, they say, you got to approve this. And so our concern is that we lose a lot, and we also learn a lot. I mean, I think back to your water point, my frustration in this case is if we had 2 or 3 months on this, we might have come up, we would have had a chance to go to other towns and talk to people in other towns and see what they've done. But we also may have come up with an approach that phases this thing and has very clear-cut, explicit criteria for when we would go to the next phase and when we solve certain problems and issues. But we can't do that
I
because
think
we.
the water issue could be quite key here. I think it's fair to say that some on the planning board, myself included, have significant reservations about the water consumption numbers that the applicant has put forward. It's very difficult for us in this short period of time to assess with high confidence what the real water requirements are. But if you do look at the other states that have experience with this, and look at these type of sources, Scientific American, Sierra Club, and the RAND Corporation, and you try to extrapolate based on that information to a facility of this size, they're saying 180,000 gallons of water per day. That's a very small amount compared to the 3 million a day we're using now as a town. But if you look at those other sources, the daily water consumption looks like it's closer to between 1/2 and 2 million gallons per day. Now that's a very broad range, 500,000 to 2 million. And it speaks to the lack of time we've had to assess the risks to the town associated with this project. And when the applicant puts forward a number that is so much different from those, it raises concerns, and we have not had time to assess that.
Because after this may be approved, you cannot stop the train that has left the village. I mean, this is,
Okay, so
What we're
talk about trains leaving a station. I'm looking at the minutes of your April 25 meeting. I think the discussion was the moratorium. And the exchange was, I think, town council was there at the time.
Correct, yeah.
The moratorium would not apply to this facility.
That's correct.
town council then says, yes, this was confirmed by the Attorney General's office, that the moratorium would not be effective if there is an RMD already registered. So, would that not mean that, let's say, the moratorium passes and you've got the moratorium out there? Let's just say, for instance, that this applicant, this petitioner, gets registered. What keeps this petitioner from then going to the commission, the Marijuana Commission, and getting a complete set of recreational licenses to grow, to sell on the premises, and the whole 9 yards under that statute?
Right.
What keeps them from doing that?
Nothing.
Okay.
So the legal opinion from town council is that once the medical marijuana is approved, the town cannot prohibit recreational.
Okay, but we could prohibit recreational today. I mean, today. We could prohibit the recreational marijuana. You can prohibit it, but you can't limit it this way. You can't. You can prohibit it under this statute, but you can't have a moratorium under this statute that will be effective against an already registered RMD. You can have an already registered RMD and pass a bylaw in town that prohibits recreational marijuana. I think there are a couple of towns that have done that. They've gone the prohibition route, and they've gotten...
They have, but what town council has told us is that once, if this were approved, this article were approved, the moratorium would not apply to it, and they would automatically be grandfathered and allowed recreational use.
Yeah.
So
But
we,
then you would say the whole street would be also, I mean, you have 20,000, so I could go ahead and apply for license for a dispensary of recreational. right?
well,
I could do that.
well,
It's
under the
the-
moratorium, if you wanted to come in right now and propose a dispensary for recreational, you couldn't do it because there is a moratorium. But the point is, for this property, there's no restriction on cultivating for, not just for medical purposes, but for recreational purposes. They could, 2 years down the road, 100% of the output of this could be for recreational.
And John, is this where a covenant might work? How about an agreement, a contract between the selectmen and the town?
It's possible. I mean, but there's a lot of things that they have, there's no agreement in place on anything, including any of the financial pieces as well. I mean, we haven't even talked about that, and, we can give you our opinion on that, even though we realize it's predominantly more your domain.
Love to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, our view is that coming out and saying $3 million a year of money incremental for this thing is just outlandish to the point of, I'm shocked. I'm just shocked because
High number, too low, too high, what do you mean?
there's no way that it's ever going to be anywhere close to that amount of money. And here's why. If you look at that article that says that, it talks about $2 per square foot for completed cultivation space and 20 cents per square foot for completed cultivation space. Okay. So that means the day this thing gets done, there is no completed cultivation space. So the first year, we're not going to get anything. We're going to get nothing. And depending on how they ramp up, let's say they go to 100,000 square feet, and 2 years from now, they have 100,000 square feet, you get 200,000.
Because there's a million that may be zoned in, they might be using 1/10.
What they're doing is, they're saying is maybe, they're not going to go to the million right away, they're going to ramp it up. So those numbers for what they're going to give us are grossly overstated and front-end loaded. The other thing is that if you look at it, what they're talking about, tax revenue, real estate tax revenue, they did a sleight of hand there too. First of all, they're counting what they already pay in taxes as an additional benefit. Well, and then the other thing is what they're saying is, and I looked at this today, is that for the first, I think, 200,000 square feet, they claim the taxes are going to go up, roughly 300,000, 350,000. I think it translates to, you could see how they did the math, it translates to $15 million worth of increased value. Well, first of all, as you know, if all that's going to happen is the value of this property increases, just because empty space is being used, that's fine for them, but it doesn't increase the total taxes because it just goes into the 2.5 base. They would have to, it will go up, but it won't go up by the tune of 15 million for the new equipment and so forth, but the amount of new equipment is going to be far less than what they're proposing. I mean, to get 100,000 square feet is not going to be $15 million worth of new equipment. It's just not. And so they've overstated the tax benefit, they've overstated the amount of money that they're going to get from the agreement.
And trying to compare their statement on jobs is difficult, but if you look at the state of Oregon, Oregon has a task force for cannabis industry, government. The entire state of Oregon, which has been at this longer than anybody else, has a total of 2,100 jobs created for the entire state. Their experience is that only about 1,300 of the 2,100 are full-time jobs. Further, many of them make $11 an hour, coming to $22,000 a year. So the statements of 3,500 jobs, high-tech, high-paid jobs, it's difficult to pin down what that is based on. Certainly Oregon's different than Massachusetts, but I mean, in the space of time, just comparing those numbers, it doesn't seem to match up with what they're representing.
Well, we don't have the square footage in Oregon either. I mean, that's.
Now I'm really not so happy where this is going right now, to be honest. I tell you from a finance committee perspective, just an additional dollar over what we have today, I would approve. Now, if they are all the way out, so be it, but it definitely will be better than what we have today from a tax revenue and from a hosting agreement, no matter what they do. So I think it's unfair to throw these numbers out, and I think we should come back to where you experts, we're wildering a little bit now in the zoning and planning, and you're wildering a little bit in the finance committee expertise. Let's just assume the building comes, we do something, and all these negative things are not happening, it will be good for the town. Maybe it's only $1 million, but $1 million is still better than nothing in my perspective. But I agree with you, if it has an unfavorable impact on water, on air, and all that other stuff, it should not be built. And again, I'm hoping that this can be done in the permitting process. But, I would really, and maybe I repeat myself here, and maybe you have to repeat yourself too, but then we have it on record. But you're stating the permitting process is basically useless.
No, I'm not saying it's useless. It has a value to ensure a certain level of standard, but what it does not do is it does not necessarily deal with unanticipated problems and unanticipated issues that we don't know about before we start the process. That's the thing. And so what we're saying is this is a rush to judgment for something like that is this huge, this material, this large. Let's make sure we understand the situation a little bit more, because we talk to a lot of developers, a lot of people involved in real estate. We're looking also at, one of the things that over the years I've been acutely aware of is what's the impact of commercial development on abutting residential development and so forth. And the experience in Colorado is, there's a study from Realtor.com that says if you live within a half mile of one of these facilities, the value of your property is going to go down by 8 to 10%. Okay, so that is a consequence that you can't pull out. That's not part of the regulatory process. That is a consequence that is unanticipated. I've talked to some people involved in the real estate businesses. They believe that something like this taints the brand of the town, when you could potentially be the weed capital of America, largest manufacturing facility of marijuana in the country, that people will make investment decisions about where to live and where to conduct a business and potentially not do that here. So on the one hand, you get money, and on the other hand, you lose money. Again, how much do you factor in those things? Fair enough, we don't know. But the point is, we should do a little bit more due diligence. I mean, my frustration here is, I honestly do think we could come up with a solution that would work, but I don't think this is the one we've got, is because there's a few things I would do differently. I'm not adverse to this use. I'm adverse to this use on 1 million square feet based on a month's worth of information that we haven't been able to vet and validate. Yeah.
John and Peter, we certainly appreciate you coming out for, the night before town meeting. I think maybe in the interest of time, what we could do is we could start from the left, and if you have any members of sort of one last question, we could ask a last question and try to wrap up in, about a minute each. Does that sound reasonable? Okay.
Thank you very much for coming. It's very much appreciated. So just so that we can all be on the same page in terms of the options that this applicant has. So if this article is not approved at town meeting, what does that mean? And then if they were to remove this article from, if it was not voted on at town meeting, then what options do they have going forward? Just so everyone's clear on the process, because I think timing, this ride the wave was important to some people.
have to wait 2 years.
So if we can just be
Well,
clear
what
about
would
that.
happen is the 2 years is that if the planning board gives an unfavorable recommendation, they can't bring it back for 2 years unless the planning board changes its mind.
So you have the right.
So we have the right to change our mind. So it's not locked in that if we, if we said, for example, and this is something that, I haven't even talked to you about this. This is just, the idea is you're thinking in real time, and I'm talking to 15 or 20 people a day on this. I could see us say, let's spend 3 months, we'll sit with the developer, spend 3 months, 6 months going over this and putting together a working group on this, and come back for a special town meeting, and with potentially some changes, or, see if something works out. But we were basically just given, this is it, approve it, it's done, and we don't have any chance to do anything with it. So that would be potentially one option. Other option is it's over, done with, the use goes back to what it was, and, we go from there. Because there is, with that property, the overlay district for the smart growth that, by the way, I don't know what happened to the 600,000, which is another issue, but, you could go back to that, or we could just go back and say, we'll work with you, but give us enough time.
And would that allow us to also think about this in broader terms? I mean, I know our master planning isn't even close to being finished, but adding this in some capacity?
Well, you could, because what you could do is you could ask, we have a consultant for the master plan, you could ask the consultant for the master plan to actually address this part of industrial development right away and bring some information in where other towns. Give us a chance to actually go to places and see what they look like and what types of communities had them, and whether they're communities that are similar to ours or different from ours. So.
Thank you.
So with regard to having to wait for the 2 years, so I understand this, if you vote unfavorable action, that triggers the 2 years for them?
If we vote unfavorable action, it's You have to wait 2 years unless the planning board comes back and says, we'll consider it sooner than 2 years.
Okay.
So we have the discretion to say, okay, we were against that, but if you want to come back with something different, we'll see it sooner.
And they, of course, have the option to withdraw their petition and not vote on their petition if they wanted to.
They would have the option to do that.
They would have the option to do
That's
that, and
correct.
that would basically free them of your discretion if you had voted negatively on it, and they could come back and you could talk and you could have the special town meeting.
Yeah. Either way,
Either way.
get you to the same place.
Yeah, get you to the same place. Okay, just did the
Yeah.
procedure right.
Yeah.
No questions?
So I guess my only question, to kind of bring up the point of order, and it just hasn't come up in the meeting yet, but basically, when the space was rezoned in, 2005 or 2006 to smart growth, we received about $600,000 from the state for the rezoning, because this is a type of residential mixed-use property that the state was encouraging, and I think
Yeah.
we did receive about $600,000. I talked to the town manager about it, and he said, obviously, that would be part of any host community agreements.
Right.
Because we'd have to pay that money back to the state of
Oh, if
Massachusetts.
we don't use it
Yeah.
for that, we
Yeah,
have to pay
because we
back.
changed it to the special use, we got
Yeah.
$600,000.
We'd have to pay it
We'd
back.
have to pay
So
it back.
again, I'm not sure they're willing to write an additional check for 600,000 on top of everything else. Yeah,
So that was my only point.
yeah.
I have really no question, just a comment about, here's another change. New information, thank you.
Yeah.
I have so many questions. I don't even know where to start. I always thought this is the country of the opportunities, where, I was always accused I'm aiming and aiming and aiming, and when I shoot, the target is gone. And my US counterparts are shooting at everything that moves. Sometimes they hit something and sometimes they don't, but that's the spirit. You just see something and you go after it. Maybe that's, I'm almost like change tables that I'm shooting. Sometimes I miss and sometimes I hit, but I stopped aiming and aiming and aiming until the target is gone.
Yeah.
Because at the end you end with nothing, So, in today's DNA, there's a lot of, to fill $1 million square foot of industrial commercial space, typically you have to pay for that. Companies, big companies, they first is, where's my tax abatement, where's this, where's there, to bring in
Yeah.
100, 1,000 employees. And there are many examples just lately, the push America First, which I support, but it comes with tax dollars. All these facilities staying here, we all know they got a nice deal staying here, and for good reasons. And here's an industry which is just starting, and certainly has in other countries proven an enormous benefit to mankind. Could start here in the US after it got kind of, I don't know how you say it, 80 years, it was, I don't know the English word for it, but it got almost like, it has a very negative, reputation.
Right, I mean, there's a long history. It goes
A long,
back.
long
Yeah,
history,
yeah.
and
Fair
other
enough,
countries.
yeah.
that-
And by the way, our perspective has nothing to do with whether weed's good, bad, or indifferent, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, we're, for purposes, completely agnostic. on
I
this,
just
so,
want to
yeah.
make a statement, and here's an industry that would actually give us upfront money. Maybe it says permitting and constructed, I understand, but it doesn't say when it's in full swing. It's permitted and I'm ready, and it's constructed, I'll give you some money. I think it's unique, and there are not many industries that would do that. And I'm also just afraid of the alternatives. I mean, it's zoned for, warehouse. You want to have an Amazon warehouse, which I guess you can, with all the trucks coming in and out, I'm just throwing out, there's many ways you could maybe use that facility.
Right.
With also with things which we don't like.
Right.
And just, the vision of a research campus, Harvard just today or yesterday with a letter of interest would like to, be part of that research facility.
Well, I think if I could address that issue by itself, I would be very skeptical of the depth of the interest for the research facility part of this for 2 or 3 reasons. One reason is we saw some of those letters. They're form letters. They're all the same. If somebody had a tremendous amount of interest, they would write a unique personal letter. But no, the letter was written for them and they signed it. So I'm a little bit skeptical of it. They have made no commitment at all on the amount of research facility as part of the total commitment at all. Nobody.
It's the nature of a letter of interest, really.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
they're painting a picture. Is my point. There's a lot of hot air in that. Also, based on what we've seen, first of all, there are no facilities like this anywhere in the U.S. Even though there's 4 or 5 states that have preceded us. There's no facility that has that high level of pharmaceutical investment research in Colorado or in Washington or in Oregon or any of those states. And the facility in Freetown that's being proposed is only talking about 30,000 square feet. So this is primarily a cultivation facility. Now, fair enough, your comment before about the difference between, getting tax abatements and actually paying. But there's a reason why they're paying us. It's because they're paying us for the externalities that this is going to cause, potentially, that are adverse. So there's a reason, if they could get away with not paying it, they would. The other thing that you have to consider, and again, this is sort of at some level not our business, but this is a hugely risky industry. Because I've talked to a fair number of people about the economics of this industry, and the problem is you cannot get bank financing very easily, and if you do, you pay enormously high interest rates. So liquidity is a big issue. Risk is a big issue. A number of developers have said to me, I've just asked them in general about this, they said, one of the things that they're doing here is they're taking an enormous amount of risk because they're building the business on one client, where a lot of other developers will have multiple clients, so if one's up, one's down. So there's a lot of risk associated with this. There's much greater risk that this could crash and burn than a normal project. And again, is that necessarily our role to do that? But again, it all paints into the
it's
the
the
overall
nature of
picture.
business, and it's again, my only thing is, and I'm a little bit disappointed, I had a bigger faith into our permitting process. That's my main learning of this today, that the permitting process apparently is not doing what it should do, stopping something which is dangerous, polluting air, risking water. But that's what I learned today, that it's not effective in that sense, because my hope was we go over that technical zoning and then we address all these issues in a 1, 2, or maybe 3 years process. But apparently that is not the case.
I think,
that how
again,
things can work. So that's my main takeaway
I
of
think, again,
this meeting.
I would balance that a little bit. I think part of the reason why the regulatory process is uncertain here is because we're dealing with a new industry. We don't know the answers, and we could approve something, and it turns out we made an egregious mistake. And the problem is once you give them the right to do it for 1 million square feet, you can't take that back. That's one of the areas where we're concerned. There's a lot we don't know, we don't know.
I think the world is a better place because so many people took a risk,
Yeah.
especially here in this country, to develop new technologies. Nobody knew where this is going.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so proud to be here. And you can hear from my accent that I'm not originally from
Yeah.
here.
My questions sort of follow on the permitting process. Looking at the business plan that they submitted, they very specifically say use of town water is not required. So are we somehow obligated to give them town water if their wells fail or their recycling water facility doesn't work? I mean, they're very specifically saying use of town water is not required in their business plan.
I saw that, and they provide an estimate of 180,000 gallons a day, and based on, again, very little time comparing what we have to compare with credible sources, Scientific American, Rand Corporation, Sierra, that's off by orders of magnitude. Now, maybe they're right, but no time to assess that. So
Right, but I mean,
when
the
they say-
180K, they mean of town water?
They're saying that's the total gallons per day consumption of the facility. And it
Okay.
seems to be orders of magnitude off. Maybe it's not, but
Right.
it seems to be. So when they say town water isn't required, what if the actual requirement is 2 million per day, which if you scale up
Right.
using those numbers, would they still say town water's not required?
Okay, and that, I guess that's really my question.
But-
So we don't have anything
But-
in place that says that they don't have access to town water. Once we permit this, the cat's sort of out of the bag, and they can then come back and say, oh, we need town water, and start sucking it out of the lake.
Gonna go out of
Is that what you're,
business unless they have town water. I don't
and then they could sue us, because we don't give them
Yeah,
access to
and
town water.
The other problem is what we don't know is what the carrying capacity of wells are and whether there would be any problem that it would be pulling effectively water from the river.
Right.
And so forth.
Okay.
We just don't know that.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that's my point. I guess what I'm saying is they've made some very firm statements here that people in the town are reading and basing their opinion on, that they don't need town water, that the property will conform to state regulations on air quality and waste disposal, that technology exists to eliminate odors within and outside the facility, best management practices that conform to state regulations and eliminate all adverse impacts on the community will be presented to the planning board as part of the special permit process. What is a special permit as they're defining it here?
That is the regulatory process that they go through. That
The
any
RMP?
commercial,
Oh, okay.
any commercial project in North Andover, you know, if you build a new building or a shopping center or anything, goes to the planning board for site plan review. And what we do is review it, and we make sure that, you know, we have the traffic works well, the water works well, all that sort of stuff.
Okay, but what you're saying essentially, to Thomas's point, is that this special permit process isn't really going to save the day if all this stuff has been misrepresented. We cannot then put the cat back in the bag, is what
That
you're
is
saying.
basically what, yes, exactly what we're saying.
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, this is, when I read through this, I was thinking, wow, that's.
Yeah, I mean, I read through that thing too, and I think they paint a very nice picture, but it's not necessarily what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, and
yeah.
that's,
Yeah,
I think it's a challenge for us to find out what we can do to help these folks catch their wave and protect us too.
yeah.
And the timing is not super. We need to perhaps step back, take a breath. It's doable if there's a will on both sides. It seems to me it can happen, but it's a little bit hard to think about it right now as it's now constructed.
Yeah. They had come in 3 months earlier. The conversation would be a lot different.
Well, John and Peter, again, thank you very much
Thank
for
you so much.
taking your time to come out. We'll see you tomorrow night on the Diaz.
same time, same place. Well, not the same place.
It does feel funny though, being in this room, because, you know, usually we're on the other side.
Yeah.
It's a different view.
Well, next year, you can just invite us to one of your meetings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Do me the favor.
Put us on the hot spot.
Yeah.
Hot seat.
Okay, so we've clicked off items 1 and 2. So the next
But
Do we want more discussion on Articles 9 and 11? What? No, Jen, go ahead. What?
no, it's not about that. Who runs the permit process then? The town, right? Andrew's staff.
Yeah, but
Building
basically,
like the people that came to my house, but obviously
right,
commercial.
but the laws are in place by the planning board. The planning board and the town bylaws control what can get permitted.
Oh,
So when you
okay.
come up, that's the criteria they'd look at. They would say,
They have to spend a ton of money and
they would
time
say,
creating laws for
is this under 1 million square feet? Yes.
Right,
Is it in the zone?
Right.
Yes. Does it meet, then you'd go into the building code and all the
But
different
they'd have
things
to get
that
it from
say.
other towns and the
police pull you
states.
over if you go over 65 miles per hour on the highway. They don't decide that it should be 65 miles per hour, that's the speed limit.
Yeah.
That's a very good analogy, yeah.
So what do we think? Should we discuss 9 and 11 anymore, or should we move on to 10?
Well, what are our options with 9 and 11? I'd like to talk about the options for them.
Well,
We can
okay,
take no action,
yeah.
we can take no action,
Mm-hmm.
and we can deliver that information from the podium that we're going to take no action on them, if we take that vote.
At this point, if we do nothing, we don't say anything.
Right.
Well, I don't know about that. I think the town ought to know that the finance committee has looked at them and has decided to
Take no action?
take no action. In other words, we're not going to make a recommendation one way or another. Or that we are going to, from a standpoint of the financial health of the town, we are going to recommend favorable action.
I would say if we're going to take no action, let's not say a word.
I don't
rather-
know about that. The town is looking to us for advice.
So you missed, I think, a step in that. So,
Okay.
so the first thing is you either vote or you don't vote. And then if you vote, there's 3 options, right? So I think it's, are we going to vote or are we going
Right.
to not vote?
Right.
Then if we do vote, how are we going to vote? I also would like to remind even myself that we have to vote on what is in the town warrant. And currently what is in the town warrant is not, it was not even recommended by town council to be voted favorable action.
That's right.
So
You mean the selectman or town council, the lawyer?
her opinion was not
Right.
favorable.
No, it was not.
And then the Board of Selectmen decided to take no action.
Right.
So, right?
Right.
So I would recommend that we make a decision on those first things. We're either voting or we're not. And then if we vote, we have to decide in which way we should vote,
Does
right?
that break our rule then? We first have to break,
First, we have to vote to break the rule. yeah.
first we have to break the
Why-
rule.
So basically, in
If
our
we change our mind and
arcane
decide to vote on 9
bylaws,
and 11.
you know, we basically,
Those are constitutional.
I mean, they are kind of
Yeah, right.
arcane, but basically what it says
No,
is,
they're good.
we always vote to discuss at one meeting and vote at the next. So for Article 10, we wouldn't have to break the rule because we discussed Article 10 at the last meeting and we're voting this one. And at the time, we decided we affirmatively said we weren't gonna take action on 9 and 11. So we can reconsider that.
Can we
But we'd
just-
have to also we'd have to break the rule first to say.
Can we straw poll it, like not break the rule because we know that's not the route we want to go by kind of
Yeah, we're allowed to, that's a
informally?
good point. Are we
Yeah.
allowed to straw poll without,
Like we're not taking a formal vote, but who would like to break the rule and who would not like to break the rule?
meeting tomorrow?
yeah, but the whole point was to not do anything but have dinner tomorrow at our pre-meeting.
Well, it's an official meeting, right?
I know, but Divya won't be there, I will not be there. I'm just,
That's
We need a
right.
quorum.
We're down, and we
You're
have a
not
quorum.
there for town meeting?
I'm showing up right before the annual
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah, so
I'm
she,
coming in 2 hours away.
yeah, that
And
was
Divya's
basically the
coming
problem.
in from New York City.
So it's exactly the same thing as that the selectmen faced. We have this language that's in this book. And we can vote this book, wherever the book is.
What, the warrants?
In the warrants.
Okay.
The book, that's what's there now. All the proposed language, that's not there, okay? We vote on what is in the book. What's in the book is not something that we can recommend. But what we can do is we can vote to take no action on it.
I think we're 2 steps ahead. First thing is, I think Sasha's right. Sasha sort of discussed, we have to vote to break the rule first.
Right, could we
Okay.
do a straw before that?
No,
Or
I think
suggestion.
it's already pretty.
Let's just have a,
Well,
that's a
let's-
pretty good straw for which we're gonna
Yeah.
vote, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. So we're
So-
going to vote to
Is there a motion on the floor about breaking the rule? And if you want to refer to this, I'll pull it out.
No,
I move to break the rule.
Second?
All in favor? All opposed?
Rules been broken.
Okay. I guess we go and have a beer after that, Karen.
Well,
We have to go
that
to
leaves us
ours.
in a position of perhaps having to speak ourselves as
Yeah, I
a
mean,
minority.
Which is fully,
Which
which
is
is
what I'm gonna
very
do.
appropriate.
Right.
Or as.
A private citizen.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
that's
what
what
you're
Yeah,
saying.
not as a minority.
Get off the
Right.
table, walk down.
I'll be getting off the
Right.
off the podium, I'll be saying as a, as a
Liz
private,
did it last year.
I did it last year.
well, you did do it last year, but I,
But, I mean, I accept that, and we're not gonna, I just would like to understand, is it because you feel you don't have enough information? Or you're just not sure where you're
yeah,
going?
is it a matter of stubbornness, or is it a matter of, what is it?
I
To
don't,
me, it's like, it's
It's not
very much
appropriate.
stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Like, our lane is, I just don't feel like,
Yeah.
for the FinCom to come out and say, we understand this planning article, to me, kind of says that we have a right to have a special sort of say on this, which I don't think we have. I think we have all the special say in the world to talk about the budget and
In Article 10?
and those things. Those things are all fine. I just don't think we have we have the skills, training, background, or experience to weigh in on this.
I agree with Bill. I've always felt that way. I thought the thing that I liked about this, having this meeting, which you wanted,
Yeah.
was get all this in the open.
Yeah.
Because we did not have a long time last time to
We
even
went all
have a
together,
discussion. It was
we
like,
didn't have
let's get out of here.
that.
Whoop. You know,
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
exactly.
It was like, and then people changed my mind about having this meeting, but relative to the lack of information, the time, I'm all for staying in the lane, not moving along.
Well,
Right, but you, let me say, you could stay in the lane by saying take no action.
that's not the lane.
But that's not really the lane. It's really saying
That's a
no
vote.
weighing
So
in on
you're
zoning.
breaking
Yeah.
precedent because
Yeah, and I
you're
just-
taking a
You're
vote
taking
on
a
a
vote on something you
specific.
typically wouldn't vote on.
Yes.
Yeah.
But after we got a lot of information and we had time to review it, a lot more than anybody on the floor in town meeting ever gonna look at that.
they're going to look
Oh.
to us
So how-
for advice,
Exactly.
and we are just sitting there mute.
Exactly.
That's the problem
I
for
would
me.
expect them to look into the planning board and the town council and even the board of selectmen before us relative to advice. Because I personally, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a zoning guy, I
I
just
know,
don't
but they think money, the town residents
Oh,
are
I-
thinking the money.
It's-
No,
But there's-
It's,
But I just think there's huge ramifications to this that we're unaware of because it's not our core competency. I mean, even after John just left, I mean, I have a significant amount of questions and I work for a developer. Like I'm often in front of the ZBA or planning board for projects. And although it's a different project, there are a lot of questions I have and things I don't understand. And you work in commercial real estate, I'm sure you have a grasp on things, but it's not our purview. It's not what we
But
are.
even if you had a ton of information and the theme was still the same, take no action, saying, I still don't have enough information. It's the difference between stating it and not stating any opinion at all.
Say that again? I think,
Even if you had more information, the idea of stating to the crowd that we're taking no action is supporting us saying, we still don't have enough information. But the
But
point
we're
is,
not really saying that.
I'm
We're just
not-
saying we're taking no action, and And we're also, by doing that, we're tacitly stating we have the standing to do so.
Yeah.
Right.
I think this is
And
more
I don't know
about
that we
us
have, you know,
zoning
for
for
Why
some
don't
people's
you
point of
think we
view.
have the standing to do so? Where is it written in our policies for this committee that we do not have standing to take a vote on a zoning article?
One time I'll agree with you, because if you read the initial bylaws, where the document is, it talks about, pretty much in general. However, it really comes down to our personal and professional opinions relative to whether or not we are professional enough to vote on a zoning law, and I do not. If you ask me about debt,
So you
Right,
don't want
call
to
me.
take, you don't want to vote to take no action on a zoning law?
correct,
Because it's zoning.
because it's,
Because
I-
it's zoning, not because it's.
I mean, we
I-
voted
I-
already.
I'm sorry.
That is the,
Yeah.
it comes down to it.
yeah,
That
we've just,
the
yeah.
finance committee is not willing to.
Not
take a-
willing to advise the town on that
Right.
particular matter?
Right, absolutely.
I don't know that willing is the right word.
I would say it's willing.
No, I-
It doesn't matter how you
You-
word it,
you-
but
you
we
come- you
It's
come-
decided
nothing to do
not-
with what's written in our,
Well,
on our
we
laws.
decided not to take a stand. And I accepted. I feel like I wasted hours and hours informing myself, sitting through this meeting, sitting through a selectmen's meeting to educate myself so I can take a stand.
But it's, you know, it's not to say that there won't be, there might not be aspects of this that we have to deal with down the road. You know, I don't think it's
I
a wasted
guess
time because,
I'll take my number and be number 30th on the floor.
Well,
but,
you know,
Or
you
maybe
know,
60, or maybe 80.
Can
or number
some,
420.
can someone call Jamie and make sure they stay open late enough?
you know, actually, we could write a minority report if you want.
Okay.
I am ready for that.
I know
Just
you
as
are.
long,
I know you are.
yeah.
No,
I know you
Now,
are.
as a minority, we
Get
can
ready for the-
have a minority report. We can.
There's,
No, I think you're totally wrong. Just totally wrong, guys.
and I respect that.
Okay. On Article 10. The only new information that I would share, and I got this kind of late. I think I forwarded, I'm not sure if I did, but oh, it came to you, actually, Jen, about Article 10. The one thing that the town manager mentioned was that it was the opinion that they didn't need the article.
oh, yes,
It was the,
I don't want to quote what he said, but.
what he said was, and let me just grab it, I have it in my other email. Hold on. And I'll send it out.
That
It was
article
just
is
got, he
not
made it the wrong time.
needed. Article 10 is not needed. It was an effort by the private petitioner to, I call it window dressing in my industry, make something look better. Sweeten the deal. Yeah, come on, how many?
But
Sweeten
the
the pie.
basic idea is the, oh, here it is. Here's, I'll forward it on to the committee so that everyone has it, and Lynn can put it into the record.
I'll read it. Do you mind if I read it?
Yeah,
right now?
you can read it.
Okay. From Andrew Mailer, the town of Burlington has closed the loop with my office regarding your host community questions, because I was asking towns for their host agreements, okay, just so you know. You should know that the host community agreement article on our warrant is not required since the selectmen and I can negotiate those terms without approval from town meeting or the finance committee. Directly to your last question to Burlington, the Board of Selectmen approved their agreement, which was only for a dispensary, without their town meeting authorizing them to do so. The bottom line is, Article 10 in our warrant is not required, and some have even referred to it as window dressing.
What if it gets voted down? Then what do you do?
It doesn't seem,
I mean, you wouldn't wanna put something in there that can.
They could still negotiate.
It's not binding.
Probably not binding, let's say.
Well, people are gonna love that.
Well, because, so this is just saying, this is a minimum, right? So if it,
It's a
if
floor.
it gets voted, so it's a floor. So if it gets voted down, the floor is non-existent and they can just negotiate
Whatever they want.
Whatever they want, right.
But if this
Oh,
is voted
interesting. Okay.
a yes,
If it's approved, it
They still
ties their
could not-
hand- well,
Well, it's a floor.
the
so-
public could tie their hands.
that's right.
Now,
That's exactly
Let me
right.
say this, because I did send you information on other towns' host agreements. What I was unable to do is give you the square footage of the facility, the cultivation areas of those facilities.
Yeah.
So I could not say apples to apples that $2 per square
I
foot.
use that exact language. I'm like, this is apples and oranges.
I do not have enough time to
Yeah.
contact every town, to then, to call the companies, to then ask them for the square footage of cultivation, to then walk out there and double check with the measuring tape. So I cannot say,
Thank you for doing this.
Yes, thank you very much.
actually, we should thank Burlington and Town of Whitman, because I emailed 5 towns exactly, and Whitman gave me everything they researched in one massive email, which was a lot. I mean, these towns have a plethora in their folders. So
Burlington really negotiated agreement.
Burlington responded within an hour at 7:30 at night,
And
and
they've
then
got a
Whitman next
percentage
morning, and I got it.
arrangement.
Yeah.
Yes, they
Percentage
do.
of profits.
Yeah, I
They
mean, as you
do.
had pointed out earlier,
They
that some
do.
of these are much better than others in terms of percentage of,
The
profit.
ones that
and
were
stuff.
done earlier,
Yes.
the town sort of like gave away the store.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, not understanding the
Not
economics of it.
under-
Probably no
understanding the
time and
economics of
thinking,
it.
we need the revenue, and, yeah.
Yeah. So later in the process, people got smarter, wiser about
And
the
they'll
business.
continue to,
And they'll
right.
continue to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't underestimate Andrew in this matter,
No,
so.
Oh, no, without question, he will go for top dollar. I think that the real question is, I'm feeling that we could spend this time all voting, and does it matter?
Yeah, and I don't even know that this, I mean, to that apples and oranges issue, I don't even know that this language would limit us to a per square footage.
It doesn't, it's a
no,
floor.
It's
It's
a
a
floor.
floor, right, and,
Yeah.
but
Which
does
is-
it even limit us to a square foot arrangement and not a revenue sharing arrangement?
no, it doesn't.
No,
It
it
doesn't.
doesn't.
No, it
So-
doesn't. It's just a floor.
Yeah, it's a
And the
floor
question
and,
is the floor adequate?
Yeah.
We don't know. We
Yeah,
have no
should it be
idea.
$5 a square
Should it
foot
be,
because
you
of
know,
all the money the
whatever.
town has to
Right.
spend to pre-permit research everything before they approve permits?
So whatever it is,
That's-
you know,
right?
we would.
'Cause that sounds like it's gonna be the big
trust Andrew,
expense.
to negotiate an agreement that was in the best interest of the town, so that
Right.
would mean that we would approve that article.
Yes, and here's the other thing. The other town host agreements I found interesting were that some of them said that the company needed to pay not upon cultivation starting, but upon the minute they opened the doors on the business. So that even during the build-out phase, they
were
had
getting
to
money.
Pay
send
the
money to
square
the
footage.
town. Yes,
Right.
and I would say, based on, again, what we learned on the permitting process and all the pre-research that would need to go in, so we
Yeah.
were savvy in the permitting process, the money should be coming in immediately upon
Right.
them getting approved to have an LLC in corp, even if
Right.
they haven't even started build-out.
right.
But again, regardless of what we vote on Article 10,
Yeah, and it,
the selectmen and the town manager will renegotiate anyway.
So do we have an obligation as the finance committee to inform citizens that this is window dressing?
It's public knowledge now.
Right. But I mean, I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
So,
But I'm not
what's
a
the
lawyer.
point of having
This
it
is-
in there? That just, I don't
Well, I
know.
mean, I
It seems
think the-
disingenuous.
I think the point of having it in there, I mean, the main,
It could be misleading the public.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I think the main thing is that, one of the interesting things about this is, as they said when they came in as petitioners, they have to be a nonprofit. So in a certain sense, yeah, they're Valley Green Grow, they're a nonprofit organization.
Okay, but hold on, the host agreement,
Yeah.
yeah, but the host agreements of other towns say at absolutely no time are you allowed to receive or apply for nonprofit status. All these
In terms
facilities
of
and host
taxes.
agreements will always be taxable entities.
Yeah.
And
But
for,
that requires a change, because a normal
yes.
nonprofit is not Merrimack College, Brooks
Right.
School.
right.
you know.
Yeah, you end up with a payment in lieu of taxes instead of
Yeah.
a,
I just wanted, this is sort of like a side here. There was something that John said that sort of struck home for me relative to the finance role in this whole thing. And first of all, no, we didn't have time. The whole process was just jammed down throat. But John made an interesting observation. He says, if you looked at what they're projecting in increase in property taxes, they're actually double counting or using money that's already there to show what their tax revenues, or property taxes would be. That's the kind of thing that we should have been involved with, saying, look at the underlying assumptions here. Do they make sense? Now, clearly, I don't think any of us, you got closest to it with these.
But I didn't, I
But,
never saw
but the
that.
whole point of the matter is that we did have a role in this thing to say, validate those numbers. Not to say whether or not the zoning is right, but to validate those numbers. It didn't happen.
We just had no
What
time, though.
That's
What are
right.
you saying now, we'll have to approve every business plan? of
No,
any-
no, sir.
of
No,
every
but
company in the
if
town?
someone tells you X, are you going to take it face value? I'm saying, John put a little doubt in my mind relative to how they counted property taxes. That's the kind of thing that we probably should have done, is to say, does the assumptions, underlying assumptions here make sense? You always do that as a good businessman.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is a business, they take a risk, they put probably 10, 15, 20 million down and have no idea where this is going. That's a good thing in the first place. Now, does this business not work out? Possible. My business can go under tomorrow, and I cannot guarantee you that.
Well,
But
Also,
if,
the zoning could get approved and another medical marijuana company could come in. We're all talking about
I
one
mean,
company.
there's always a risk that these numbers are not working out. I mean, we can't ask him for a guarantee. I mean, this is
No,
impossible in
I
our
agree with you there,
world.
but if you're using a sweetener, like they did the little cards that everyone got, all the postcards that came out, that from their operation, saying, look at how much more money we can have in the town, that does impact my influence, that does impact my vote, that does impact how I look at things. So this, I do want to look at the underlying assumptions.
But does that stop us from voting on 10?
What was the vote we took last time on 10?
We just voted
To vote
to
on
vote
it.
on it.
Oh,
And then we were gonna do it over Chinese, but I'd
We're gonna do it on
rather
tomorrow
do
night.
it tonight.
Yeah, that's right.
And be done. Now are we allowed to do a straw without actually?
Well, you know,
We're not.
now that I know that it's just window dressing and it's pointless, my inclination is to abstain. I mean,
Yeah, I guess that,
it's like, why do they even have it in there? I think it's just, it's,
because
what?
sweetener.
Because
Yeah,
it's
but-
a citizen's petition that goes with the other two, and doesn't that
Oh,
look
that's right, it's a
really
citizen's
nice?
position, okay.
Doesn't that,
They're
Petition.
all citizens, really.
Yeah,
they're all-
yeah.
but,
Yeah.
but doesn't that look really nice next to the other articles relating to the same thing? That makes tons of sense to me. Not saying
Yeah.
that that's the reason,
Just
I'm
say-
not,
I'm
I don't
sorry.
know,
just saying,
just, I don't know.
Yeah, but I guess then, okay, now thinking it from that point of view, that it's a citizen's petition, my inclination is to say, no. I don't want any limits, anything in writing that in any way limits Andrew and the Board of Selectmen from negotiating exactly what is the best thing for this town. These guys are putting something in here that could potentially be someday litigated as a restriction on what they can do. I mean, for example, it says, deemed to be in the best interest of town, which shall include payment by the property owner of an annual fee, blah, blah, blah. Well, include but not be limited to. You know, I would include that if it were, you know, if,
right, because again,
to me-
without Article 10, automatically, the
They get to do
town
it.
manager and the selectmen have absolutely the right to negotiate.
they have
most agreements.
discretion.
With or without.
Right,
We do
right.
not need citizens of the town to say you're allowed to make.
right,
those
exactly.
agreements.
This is totally, now that I know what this is about, now that
I don't
you've put it in that,
understand anyway.
I wouldn't vote, I would actually vote against it.
Should make a good-
I'd say it's limiting us.
Make a good argument.
I'm just
Or
one,
that there could be legal action by
Yeah.
the citizen against the town
Yep,
for.
nope, I would say,
going-
I think we should
renegotiating the
vote
terms.
that this, unfavorable action on this, because
I move-
as a town, we already have this right, we don't need this petitioner to tell us that we do.
Okay,
Why
I move
do-
that we vote unfavorable action on Article 10.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And I gotta tell you, I'm
we
just,
didn't finish discussing. I feel like that was,
what's the point? I mean, really, what's the
For the
point?
record, I'm not in favor. I didn't say aye.
Right.
All opposed?
Neither did she. Oh, sorry, all opposed.
I'm not ready to vote.
No?
What is my, I don't know the rules on this. Like, what can I, I'm just one.
Okay, all right, so let's just pause for a second then, okay?
That was-
Let's just pause. So the motion was to recommend
Unfavorable action.
unfavorable action.
I hereby move that we can reconsider that last vote in light of Sasha's objection and the feeling that it went by too quickly.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
So the Board of Selectmen recommended favorable action.
Yes.
I would like to understand if any of you could enlighten me on why they did that, because they are very close to this issue. If there is a reason why that they voted favorable action. Was there a recommendation or an opinion by town council that said this wouldn't have an impact on negotiations
I don't-
later?
I don't actually know. I know that's always been, Andrew told me that a few weeks prior, when we did the town meeting preview. So, but I didn't really understand why the selectmen reached the decision that they did.
Okay, so that's the first piece. The second piece is that although we look at these as three and they are three separate articles, we're not voting on the other two articles. So if we are going to vote unfavorably on the one article that we are voting on relating to the medical marijuana overlay district, that says something to the public, I believe. So potentially it makes more sense to not vote or to take no action.
Okay, I see your point
Then
there.
it may, then we
May
may to say
confuse it.
Because they might
Sends the
extrapolate
wrong-
and say,
sends the wrong
they
message.
probably would have if they could have on 9 and 11 voted unfavorable, and now,
because how many people
Which is
are
not true.
watching this? So they wouldn't have just,
Sasha, very good.
Yeah, interesting.
excellent.
so I don't know. I think we should
That's right.
consider
I felt it was all or nothing.
consider either not voting or voting and taking no action in light of those two things. I also don't feel very comfortable with limited information taking an action in direct opposition to the Board of Selectmen in light of not understanding why they voted favorable action.
So I'll make a motion.
Make a
Whoa.
motion.
That did any more discussion?
Okay,
Somebody make a motion.
why don't we just finish the discussion?
Yeah.
Well, no, let's just make a motion.
No, like, Tim had a point he wanted to make, so.
What?
No, actually, I was gonna do a motion, but I heard
Oh,
Thomas
okay.
here, so I yield the floor to Thomas.
How can you make a comment, a motion, how can you make a recommendation on one and not the other two?
Because we decided that we were going to
We're
take a
not gonna
vote on
step in the
Article
zoning
10.
sandbox.
And so are we?
But can we
What is our vote?
to not vote on Article 10,
I say we,
or not give a recommendation?
So, wait, so.
yeah, we could just
so
stay
what-
silent. We could
what-
just do not, I mean, I think those are our options. We could do nothing, we could do favorable, we could do unfavorable. Those are our three options. So we could just leave this meeting and have taken no
A motion.
action.
No, but taking no action will be written down in the records. Can we?
But not, first of all, nothing, everything that's already in the warrant is in here. So we would do it at town meeting. So what'll happen at town meeting is, they could say, does the finance committee took, we could just say, I would just say literally, Mr. Moderator, the finance committee took no action relative to
Right,
Article
or
10.
couldn't we just, right now, vote to not give a recommendation of no action, favorable, unfavorable?
She's saying not vote.
Not vote. That's what you're saying.
You not vote or you
That's
vote.
what I'm saying.
It's going back
Are we
to
saying the
Sasha's
same thing?
point.
We have to vote to not vote.
No, we don't have to vote
Oh,
to
'cause
not.
I
No, we
thought
could
last
not.
meeting we
No.
voted to vote.
Why was it so complicated?
I'm tired,
I mean,
I'm trying to find the rules.
here's the petitioner, doesn't have to offer anything, but he offers something. And we say no, we don't want it.
Because it might
limit us.
limit the town.
What my
What
concern
limit
is,
is floor, a floor,
No.
I mean, what does a floor mean?
No, but, okay,
A
let
floor
me
means
give
you
a
can go
hypothetical.
beyond, but you can go
Okay,
a
but
lot
let me give a
higher.
hypothetical
It could
based
be
on
4,
most agreements
5,
of other
6,
towns.
7, 10, or whatever.
I understand, but let me give you an example,
I
okay?
mean,
We say
we vote
favorable
against
action.
and the town meeting might also vote against it. This article will never ever show up.
But what if we vote favorable? And then they start to build? and they negotiate a hosting agreement with the town,
Right.
okay? And the town realizes, wait a minute, we want money now. We don't want to wait till the cultivation of the plants start growing to receive the $2 per square foot. We need money now because we're spending a lot in the
That
town.
is not true. This is constructed, permitted and constructed. That doesn't mean you have to wait until these are growing.
I understand
It's
that.
constructed.
I understand. So
So
in
it's
the new
upfront.
host agreement that he negotiates, the town does with them, he says, you're gonna start paying right away. I don't care if it's not cultivated yet. The private citizen, the marijuana company, sues the town and says, but at town meeting, you said favorable action to this $2 per square foot. You're going against what you said.
What do you mean, the floor of $2?
Yeah, but that's $2 upon cultivation started.
No.
Permitted and
No, no,
constructed
permitted
cultivation. She's
and
just not,
constructed.
What am I getting?
she's just not using the specific word. Her
It's
point
not
is the same.
cultivating.
Well, I think her point is the same, that you wouldn't get revenue during the construction phase.
Yes,
Which will
thank you.
take anywhere
years.
between 12 to 24 months, I'm assuming.
Other
The
towns are
reason
getting
why
much
they're using
more.
that building is because everything is already built.
And
The build-out
That's
is
They
not-
have to rehab for this.
I don't believe
I
that's the case.
I think what Thomas is saying, of course, it's a
Yeah.
floor. This doesn't
I
keep you
understand.
from
Yeah.
Yeah.
adding
I completely
anything
understand.
else. I mean, it's a floor. I don't, the litigation piece, I think, is minor.
But what does permitted
think
and
it's-
constructed mean?
Well,
Constructed, meaning finished? Absolutely
Yeah.
finished?
Construct permanent, so you go through the permitting process.
Right.
And then your build out is completed. That's
Right.
Because it's
Completed.
ED, constructed.
Right, they come out with a,
Constructed, it's
they'll come out
built.
with your final inspection, and in the commercial real estate sort of world where I do in office, they'll give you a certificate of occupancy. And so it'd be a similar sort of, all your permits are in place, you've met all the code requirements, you're good to start
I
operating.
just want
For
to
your
take
20,
over.
for your
Yes,
first
no,
20,000
Yeah.
square feet. And then you go on to your 100,000 square feet.
whatever it is.
And it ramps up.
I think it's
Okay.
fair, the timing is fair, you know, I mean,
Yeah, but other towns are not waiting for the
You wanna
space to
take
be
it
built
over?
out in the
okay, well.
Okay.
I'm sure there are 1,000 different agreements.
But again, but my point was, my concern here is that what we're doing is, if indeed it's true that this is just window dressing, and Andrew and the Board of Selectmen can negotiate any agreement with any host agreement. They have
no
the
lawyer could come
authority
in and sue them
under
for
law.
changing.
They have the authority under law to do this. To then say in a town meeting, we're granting them authority, doesn't make sense. We're
It's not granting authority, it's only saying, we'll pay you a minimum of $2.
to see if the town will vote to authorize the town manager and board of selectmen to negotiate and execute a host agreement.
This is just how these are always so.
Right, but
you know.
it does say,
It's giving
it
them
does
their
say
authority.
authorization.
We're granting them authority that they already have.
No, they say, I expect a negotiation with the town manager, and I give him at least $2 per permitted and constructed.
Yeah.
I'm the petitioner, give that to you. No questions asked, and as soon as I have my permit to what the occupy or to use, you know,
It
and
could be
then,
read that way, but it could be read
and,
another way. My concern is that we're putting something, we're codifying something that a petitioner is asking for that actually we have the right to do under law. The town manager and the Board of Selectmen could negotiate any agreement they wanted, and it wouldn't necessarily have a floor, but maybe it's based on revenue, maybe it's based on something else. You know, we're setting these terms at this point, and they may not be the most advantageous terms.
Well, I guess the other question is,
I know
on
it's
the
a
flip
floor.
side, if they don't need to be authorized to do it, do they have to be mandated to follow it? So in other words, if the town votes this in, does that set something which, does that have any legal authority? Or is Andrew saying
Andrew's saying
kind
no.
of saying the other thing, that
It doesn't.
even if it wouldn't bind anybody,
From
even if we passed it?
Right, and and the other thing is does it make it exclusive?
This is
What if
actually,
some, you know,
this is starting to fall again into the same kind of Article 9 and 11 questions we were having.
Yeah.
We don't know Jack. We have an opinion from town manager, which I think is 99% certain, but we don't know. You know, it's like, we're going back and forth, and it's round and round and round, and we just don't know. Tell me about the capital improvement plan, tell me about the operating budget, I think we know. This
I
we don't.
urge
We
us
could
to
know, we
take a
just didn't
vote,
have
one
time.
way or another. You can vote? favorable action, not to take any action, or unfavorable. Take a vote.
But either
Okay.
way,
Pick
it's
your
on the
vote.
record that we voted, right?
Either way, it's on the record that we recognize it's a financial piece,
God bless you.
Thank you.
rather than simply doing
But she's-
nothing.
And Sasha's saying, regardless of one of those three choices, we are now on the record for having an opinion on one of the three articles.
Yes, sitting here in this room, being taped by people, and nobody's going to be looking at this tape. But people are going to be at town meeting and saying to us,
Why did you talk
you
about 10
are
but
an
9 and not 11?"
advisory committee. What do you think? What are you doing there? It's not even in your report anywhere that you recognize that this is, an opportunity that may be advantageous to the town.
People are gonna pick up on that.
Well,
So,
listen, I mean, I will freely and firmly admit that my gut instinct on this, and the reason why I, as the chair of the committee, steered clear of this is, it was too controversial an issue to deal with in too short a time. And I just never thought that this was really gonna come through. That was sort of my gut instinct, because I'm focused upon the things that I've developed,
in other words, from a political standpoint,
From a-
it's not going to pass by the
Well,
town anyway, so why
pol-
spend any time on it?
Oh, no.
No.
Well, no, I just didn't think, basically, that's basically it. I mean, absolutely, because it's a huge change. Do we want to be, it's a very big change for our community, and it had a very short time span. I mean, I think even the kindergarten building, right? That got proposed in October. I felt that was too short a time frame because the citizens, the people who do their day-to-day stuff in this town do not have the time or the ability to really sift through all these issues. And I suppose you could take the thing to say that, but still, it was 2 months. The planning board, they're the experts in this. They've had a couple months on it. They've had all these meetings. They're not there yet. I mean, it's a brand-new industry. I mean, there are issues from here to there. I've heard one of the issues in Chicago is that since the banks won't do business with these people, there's crime because people, raid the dispensaries and raid the businesses because they have cash, But I mean, I'm saying there's a lot of issues. So I never thought that the town could accomplish this in the time frame at hand, which is really from March 3rd, which is really 8 weeks, the busiest 8 weeks of the political calendar in this town. And so, really, yes, and from a political standpoint, and I will say this, if we're, as a committee, are going to step into a situation, let's say we came one year and we felt that the school budget wasn't high enough, and we had done our homework, and we were going to say, you know what, we don't recommend the same amount as the town manager and the Board of Selectmen on the schools. That would be a political decision that I would be completely comfortable making because it would have been developed through time and experience and study. And I just didn't think that this particular incident sort of merited, the amount of work that would go into it. Because the time frame is the developer's time frame and not the town's time frame. The developer is here or there, and I think John brought up some good points. He's someone who deals with people in the development industry all the time. A developer may have projects going in 5, 6, 7, 8 places, and they're going to go for the one that, works for them, right?
This is true, Bill.
So-
But, on the other hand, I think that this committee has really no business taking into consideration the politics of it.
I agree with that.
So this, if you
So
want to
you
be
make it based on
political, you go to
education
the
and what
Board
you
of
understand.
Selectmen.
Yeah.
I mean, I can call it on both ways on that. I really think that we should be out of the policy business. This was something that was presented to us, period. It has some financial aspects, arguably.
Yes.
We are an advisory body. We are charged with, or I think we have, we should be sharing our information with our fellows who are sitting in the audience trying to figure this out. And
mean,
I think that we fall short of our job
That's our
if we
duty to
don't
inform.
take a duty to inform
Whichever one of
responsibility
the
to
three ways
inform.
it is.
Whichever one of the three ways it is, I don't care.
Only the two ways. I think it's favorable or unfavorable. Not to say anything, I think I'm exactly with you. This is just not doing our job.
I disagree with that, not doing our job piece. Just because if someone on this committee does not feel like they have adequate information, then I don't think they're failing in their job to vote, if they don't vote yes or no.
Okay.
If you want to vote yes and your point is we need to take a vote, then and that's the way the committee feels, then that's fine, that's appropriate. But if someone feels like, you know, they want to take no action because of the things that came to light during our discussion, and some of the things I think Liz talked about at length, then that's their purview.
Okay, I move that this committee vote to take no action on this article. Second?
On Article 10.
I withdraw that motion. I move that this committee vote unfavorable action on this article. Anybody?
Just give me a second.
Yeah, I need to.
We have no
I-
way to explain why we're saying unfavorable action, right? This is
I
just.
would, sure you do. I move,
All right, if
I
there's a
withdraw
motion, if there's
that
a motion
motion.
and the
I
discussion is
move.
over. I just think if there's a motion on the floor, there's a second, and there's not a second, then we move on to the next motion.
okay.
But the discussion is
So I
ended.
withdraw that motion, and I make a motion then, in that case, that we vote to take favorable action.
Second?
Okay, second. Okay, can I
All
call
right,
a
all in
vote?
favor of favorable action on Article 10?
Favorable action?
Favorable action on Article 10. Okay, all opposed to favorable action on Article 10.
Okay, we're on record.
Okay.
We are on record. And
Right, do we need a majority or a quorum, I'm sorry?
No, so basically, there was a failed vote for favorable action, so we have no recommendation.
Oh,
On
we
Article
didn't have
10.
a quorum.
No, it has nothing to do with the quorum, it's
Oh.
because the
No,
motion
because
didn't pass.
Sasha's abstaining.
They just didn't pace.
No,
Did
Sasha,
you abstain?
I voted
Oh.
no. She voted.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand go up.
yeah.
Okay.
So, okay.
so now, at town meeting, what is the chair going to report to the town about what just happened here?
I'll say we did not make a recommendation. We did not recommend favorable action on this. But I'm not going to say we recommended unfavorable action.
Okay,
Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
you're going to say again?
I'm going to say, and I'll just write it down. Let me just write it down so I have it. What I would say is, okay, we did not recommend favorable action, but we did not recommend unfavorable action. Right? Because that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
The motion came up for favorable action, we voted against it.
Let's make a sentence out of this now.
Okay.
That's seen as unfavorable. You can turn it the way you want to do it.
I don't,
I didn't want to take any act, I mean, I just,
yeah, I know.
I would be very comfortable getting up and saying, I would have been very uncomfortable if we took no action, saying like, you know, we talked to some people and heard some legal opinions that, you know, this is giving a power that is not needed. I would have been comfortable saying that, but I'll be just as comfortable saying what we said, which is the Finance Committee voted against taking favorable action on Article 10. Do we want any explanation? Do we want a minority report? We could have a minority report and,
I think we should, I don't know, you tell me.
and what I would like to say is
That because we just, not because we think it's a bad thing,
right.
we just didn't, we had new
Did not have
information
enough
presented.
time.
I think what you said is enough. The Finance Committee voted against taking favorable action on Article 10.
I should say against recommending favorable action.
Yeah, recommending.
Why don't we want to do a because?
Because somebody can ask us
Oh,
if
they
they want to
can?
know. Sure.
Okay, so what if somebody asks us?
Well, then you
It's put on
can
the
blather
spot.
away.
Then, no.
Then I would speak for the majority, and I think what the majority would say is, if I'm wrong, I mean, I know Sasha and Liz have said this, that if the selectmen and the town council believe they already have the right to negotiate this host community agreement, you know, without this article.
The town gains nothing by giving this power to the petitioner, in my opinion. You know,
Or-
if we already have that
Yeah, if
authority.
you say
Or
that,
if they
but-
do, I just don't know that.
Right,
I just
right,
don't. kn-
exactly.
I just don't
Yes.
know.
We're all doing the same thing right now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
you know?
Thomas, do you want to do a minority report?
What is a minority report?
I think it's a show.
It's like a dissenting opinion. It's basically a dissenting opinion.
Yes.
Oh, it's
It's a dissenting opinion, like you would have from a court,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no, I'm done with it, so, fine. The FinCom voted against recommending favorable action on Article 10. Okay, period. That's what's going to get delivered from
Yes.
the podium. Okay, this, the chair. Fine, and then, you know,
Okay.
we can go from there. Let's see, what, so are we done with this yet?
Anything else in the rules of Robert?
I know, swear to God,
Anything
we're
else
like
from
an
Robert there?
encyclopedia
Nope.
of meetings and.
I make a motion to adjourn this great meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.